Hey friends, welcome back to the How to Survive Medical School series. In this video, we're talking about our favorite medical resources. Now, for me, honestly, I think the main thing is that there's this red book, which I no longer have. It's a red book called Oxford Cases in Medicine and Surgery. And I thought that was like a really good first principles understanding of how to think about clinical reasoning. On top of that, I really liked the 100 cases in medicine, 100 cases in surgery, 100 cases in obstetrics and gynecology, 100 cases in pediatrics. Those books, which are very easy to find online if you just kind of Google the title and PDF on Google. It's very easy to find these online, and those books are really good. Beyond that, I mostly use the question bank Past Medicine. I dabbled a little bit in Past Test, but me and most of my friends at Cambridge used Past Medicine, and we thought that was very good. If you're in the US, I know there's all sorts of great resources. I'm going through Pathoma at the moment, which is fantastic for pathology, and I kind of wish I'd discovered it when I was actually in med school in the UK. And honestly, beyond that, just kind of Googling stuff and trusting the Wikipedia article to have the right information, because I think it's very easy for us to be like, oh, Wikipedia, lol, I'm a medical student, I don't use Wikipedia. But literally, 2 years of being a doctor, every single day I look up stuff on Wikipedia, as does everyone else I know. So that would be my recommendations for medical resources. And now we're going to hear from a lot of my friends about what their recommendations are as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
So Henry Marsh's books have been probably my favourite medical books that I've read in the past couple of years. So Henry Marsh is a neurosurgeon. He's retired now, but he's written these two books. The first is called Do No Harm, and the second is called Admissions. And he's written, I suppose it's like a memoir really, of his life and experience being a neurosurgeon, right from when he was training to being an internationally renowned consultant. And they are so brutally honest. He really makes himself vulnerable and explores some really, really difficult issues in them that I think are so pertinent to medics. And they really made me think about how I approach patients, which I think is a really good thing.
I'm not really the type of person to use textbooks that much. I just find that they're quite overwhelming with loads and loads of knowledge. They are quite useful sometimes for me to just reference back to when I'm looking something up in particular, but I can't really just sit down and read a textbook. Otherwise, I just don't know what it is that I want to find out. Resources-wise, I think the main thing I use is the internet. I just Google things, I look up the disease that I'm trying to find out about and try and find a legitimate website to look it up on. Also, things like Past Medicine I've used quite a lot for doing past papers, past questions. And things like Geeky Medics or OSCE Stop I've used a lot for the clinical side of things. So I'll just Google hand examination or something like that and see what comes up, and then use that PDF to learn that particular examination. I think also a lot of the resources I've used are through sharing with friends. So rather than a textbook per se, it might be that someone 5 years ago read a textbook and wrote down the information from that and has then passed it around all of their friends at university. And I would definitely advocate for sharing your resources with other people, because it helps everyone out. There's no sort of competition. There doesn't need to be any competition. We're all trying to be the best doctors we can. So I would definitely say if your friends are needing some of your resources or vice versa, then get into the habit of sharing those with them.
It really depends what kind of learner you are. The Oxford Handbook is very useful as a foundational guide. It's very useful and compact summary. The American version of it, I think, is the Massachusetts General Hospital Pocket Guide. Loads of people use it. So I think, those are very useful tools. Pass your question banks. Question banks. I think more and more question banks are coming up. It's hard to pick the right one, but if you ask around your seniors, dabble in a few, then you can tell. I think also that it's useful to read books like Atul Gawande's Being Mortal. It makes you think about what kind of clinician you want to be, what matters in the practice of medicine, and it's not just about knowing the most things. It's also about relating to their patients, understanding what motivates them, what's important to them, and treating that aspect, which is a bit more nebulous, a bit softer, but nonetheless important for you as a physician to think about as well.
Plug for Past Medicine again with no conflicts of interest. But yeah, the Oxford Handbook was good. It depends really on what you're revising for. So Past Medicine was great for the written exams. for some of the interview things where I just wanted to make sure, I've had quite an academic training at Cambridge. So for some of the practical things like how do you manage a tension pneumothorax, how would you manage a PE, how would you manage a heart attack, the back pages of the Oxford Clinical Handbook are pretty good because they just give you a sort of F1 level knowledge of really basic emergencies that you actually should know. I haven't read much of it, but I've heard the Oxford Handbook for the Foundation Programme is pretty well received by a lot of people. And Robin's basic pathology was pretty good for our path exams, but might be sort of a bit above and beyond what many medical schools would want you to know.
Before we continue, I just want to tell you about the sponsor for this video, and that is Brilliant. Brilliant is a fantastic online learning community with online courses for maths, science, and computer science. So if you're a medical student, chances are your life is all consumed by medicine, as mine sort of was. And Brilliant is a great place to learn a little bit more about other topics. One thing that I'd particularly recommend is Brilliant's courses on computer science. So they've got a really good one about the fundamentals of computer science, the fundamentals of algorithms. And then once you've done those, there's a really fantastic one about learning Python from the ground up. And the reason I'd recommend the computer science ones for medics in particular is because so much of research these days and all the kind of tech stuff in medicine at the moment is focusing more on like machine learning, AI, big data, all of those sorts of topics. All of that sort of stuff is stuff that really is valuable and a skill that very few other people have. So if you're a medical student and you're interested in kind of making your CV and your general like portfolio of activities, like the skills that you have a little bit better, then please do go to brilliant.org/appendix, and that will give you a free trial. And then if you click on that link, the first 200 people to do so will get 20% off the annual premium subscription as well. So thanks Brilliant for sponsoring this video.
So my favorite medical books, I would say one of them is Paul Kalanithe's When Breath Becomes Air. I thought it was a really brilliant book that is quite unique in that it combines the author's background in philosophy with his. So actually, to give you a bit of a background, okay, some of you may or may not have read the book. It's quite a popular one, but essentially, the author is someone who has a background in philosophy, then studies medicine, qualifies as a doctor. I think he was a neurosurgeon, if I remember correctly, and then he got diagnosed with cancer and went through this experience with his wife and wrote a lot about his experiences of transitioning from being a doctor to now being a patient, and a lot of the kind of philosophical element behind that. And I thought the book was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was very emotional, very well written, and very insightful. So that would certainly be one of my top recommendations. Another book I really enjoyed is a book called The Naked Surgeon by a doctor called Salman Nashef, which is a doctor I had the good fortune to work with because he's based at one of the hospitals that Cambridge medical students go to. And his book is a very entertaining, humorous, insightful book about using transparency in surgery to improve surgical outcomes and to give patients more insight into the risks of operations and the benefits, and helping patients to understand more about whether a particular operation is in their best interests, and also help surgeons decide whether or not it is the case. So Salman Nashef was part of a team that came up with this risk model called the Euro score, which is used to give a percentage risk of people having cardiac surgery based on other kind of factors like comorbidities, their age, and other factors as well. And this book is basically it's an exploration of these principles of transparency and helping patients to make decisions in surgery.
So lots of people like Osmosis, which is like a series of videos. I don't really like Osmosis, but you can cut that bit out. It's very useful because it's really good for people who maybe don't understand the subject or are visual learners, because they kind of take you through different conditions and they draw everything out for you, and you can kind of screenshot that and put it in your notes. I think the key reference textbook you should have is the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine, because even though it looks small and it's not as detailed as one of those massive Kumar and Clark books, it contains all you need to be a medical student. You don't need any more information than that. Don't get bogged down in massive books with tons of detail, because realistically, like, that's not going to come up in your exams, and the stuff in the Oxford Handbook probably will. For general medicine, the Oxford cases in medicine and surgery. For general pathology, 100 cases in pathology. Like specific books, Obs and Gynae, I found Impy and Child really good. And the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Specialties, because it contains good summaries of like specialties like Obs and Gynae, Peds, ENT, ophthalmology, and it contains just the right amount of information.
Books. I really liked Ben Goldacre's Bad Science. I know it's not purely medical as such, scientific, but it really, really helps you understand some of the stats that probably undertaught in medicine, and sort of their pitfalls, which are common ideas, and he writes really well.
So I'm going to split my answer into the work and then just kind of general interest. So the best books I found for actually learning medicine were the Clinical Cases Uncovered series and the 100 Cases in X Specialty series. I found that working through those cases really helped me actually understand what it was I was reading, as well as the kind of other textbooks and Oxford Handbook and all those kinds of things. The other thing that I found really useful, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to recommend, but the BMA online library of ebooks. Having access to that meant that I never needed to move from my desk chair in order to learn medicine, and it's definitely helped me be more productive. For general interest, I've found two really, really good books about medicine. So the first one is by Paul Kalanithi, When Breath Becomes Air. That is just such a touching story of one doctor's journey being a patient. It's something that really puts you back in the mindset of why you want to become a doctor and what you can do for people. The other book that I found really helpful is written by an Edinburgh GP. It's called Adventures in Human Being. And what he'll do is in each chapter he takes a particular body part and he'll expand on some story about how that came to be understood through medicine, or some kind of historical story attached to it. That again, it just kind of, you learn a little bit of medicine, but what you really gain is just so much more appreciation of all of the thought that has gone into medical practice over the last hundreds of years. So yeah, that really improved my life too.